Call the meeting to order. I'd like a roll call, please, clerk.
Alderman Ashour?
Here.
Alderman Berry?
Here.
Alderman Davalos?
Here.
Alderman Goodman?
Here.
Alderman Hoffman?
I'll call you later. I'll call you tomorrow.
Here.
Alderman Widener?
Here.
Alderman Wilson?
Here.
Alderman Bevere is excused.
Thank you. Will those who are able join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay, now is the time that we have set aside for citizens' comments. I've got a stack here, so if anybody wants to speak now, that's certainly all right. Most of them seem to be about item number 1. So what we generally do is if people want to talk about an item on the agenda, we discuss it at the time of that item, but anyone who wants to speak now who did sign up is free to do so. Let's see, I've got Steve Brummel, Tom Smiley, Teresa Dubovich, Harlan Davis, Stephen Lewis, Marty Kometz, Brian Sweeney, Ron Butler, and Justin Kahn. So if anybody wants to speak now, come on up. Okay. Please state your name and address and then go right ahead.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Brummel, and I live at 30 West 110 Lakeview Drive, and I have lived there since 1991. So I am aware of a petition that was started by someone that does not live in Summer Lake subdivision to remove traffic signs that lead into Summer Lake subdivision. So this area has been under discussion before. There have been numerous traffic studies on this area. And to my understanding, years ago, before I even lived there, there was blockades right at the end of Lakeview that served as like a dead end. But since I've lived there, it's been open. And then through the years, like I said, there's been studies, and then they implemented what we have now. So I live basically right on the corner, so if anybody wants a view of what happens there, you're more than welcome to come on by, stop by, and sit in my driveway with me and see. But it's a very busy corner. It's less busy since the implement's been changed. So I'm not sure what good would come from allowing more traffic to come into Summer Lakes. Especially on Lakeview Drive. Its basic purpose years ago was people would try to beat the stoplight at 59 and Butterfield and come flying in either direction, and so to feel like they were making time or improving time, they would speed excessively through there, and sometimes not even come to a complete stop at the stop sign there. So I can tell you that since the traffic signs have been implemented, there is more of a neighborhood feel to the streets and the surrounding area, and a noticeable reduction in traffic. So I've lived in Warrenville for over 28 years and have grown to love the small town feel. And I'm sure everyone's aware also coming soon is the construction for the new Two Brothers complex, which is literally right where, it'll be just south of where all this signage is. And I'm sure that will increase traffic flow. I'm sure it's going to be designed well by the city so that they try to keep all the, customers and all the retail trying to come in off of 59 and Butterfield. But you just don't know. You just don't know how people will end up leaving there if they're allowed to come through there. It's just one more way that would include more traffic in the area. So I guess in conclusion, you need to think about what is best for our community. Like I said, I love the small town feel of it, but what's best for the community and the neighborhood? And I guess some people, you know, are always more concerned about what is in it for themselves than for the community. So anyways, thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Next. Oh, no, go right ahead. Just one at a time. Thank you. Name and address, and then whatever you'd like to say.
Tom Smiley, 3S030 Sunset Drive. I actually wrote down my comments this time, is not to ramble. Unlike Steve, my wife and I moved in 2 years ago. So like I said before, I'm a young buck, new to the area, but my voice is valued just as much as anybody else's. So upon hearing that some folks received surveys in the mail, actually I'm just going to read this and go from there. So I canvassed the neighborhood March 1st through the 3rd, measuring public opinion and learning the history of the intersection, and boy, there is plenty. It has seen numerous changes and has been the subject of various debates and studies ad nauseum. The current petition seeking to change said signage, nor the subsequent survey sent out, did not speak for the entirety of South Summer Lakes. The motive for such changes should also be called into question. So I'm going to appeal to the council to, 1, vote for leaving the current signage and the blockade in place indefinitely, or 2, defer the vote until further development, i.e. the Two Brothers Complex and Lexington Terrace subdivision across Route 56, until the area has been until the development has been completed and new traffic volumes can be properly assessed. During my course of canvassing the entire South Summer Lakes area, I had some observations and findings that I'd like to share with you within the survey. While I appreciate the City Council and police discussing the January petition submitted and observing it was lacking in signatures from those who lived along Lakeview Drive, unfortunately, the survey mailed in February was not sent out to those that live on Sunset Drive, Sunset Court, Barclay Avenue, or Calumet Avenue West cul-de-sac. These streets would also be impacted by the removal of said signage. Many of them have current traffic signs in place related to this very issue. I did my best to canvass the area residents, making sure that, 1, people at least voted, because at the end of the day, we all have a voice. So that was my first goal. If they didn't get a survey, I presented them with all the options. I had a paper in hand. I let some take pictures with my phone so they could see what was happening in our community and what was on the table. I gathered signatures from residents that were in favor of supporting the signs leaving, just as myself. So I provided that paperwork for you to read. I also made comments on if people didn't sign, but they said they were going to vote in favor of leaving or removing, and just some general comments if they didn't answer the door, which I found to be most prevalent. So while I gained these petitions or these signatures in favor of leaving the signage, I would ask that these be counted and voted with the additional ballots that have already been submitted, as our streets would also be impacted by this event should they come down. So while I was out going door to door, a number of residents expressed the blow. Indifferent to the situation in general, supported removing it because they supported removal, but at the same time received traffic citations for said violations of traffic signs. People said they would continue to ignore and disobey signage. To that I said, good for you. Environmental concerns. People saying the signs were a nuisance and an inconvenience. And at one point on a social forum online, somebody accusing those citing safety concerns to be using scare tactics without having statistics. So let me add a few rebuttals here about the safety. Summer Lakes has seen a number of newer families moving in. This cycle is healthy for a community and a chance to reinvest in the next generation. These families have young children. There's a few of us in the group already. And appreciate the safety these traffic controls help provide. A majority of those in favor of removing these signs have already seen their children grow up or move out. And so I would ask that the same desire for safety they once had, they would extend to the newer generation coming behind them. It's just a give and take respect. I witnessed a number of pet owners walking before and after work. An increase in traffic would not only put our children at risk, but potentially those walking their pets and their furry friends. Traffic control signs were put in place for a reason after lengthy review and various strategies were implemented. I understand not everyone wants to comply, but the signs do help deter. We should honor the work done a decade ago, if not more, especially with the new pending developments. And lastly, I wanted to address the harsh language accosting people concerned about safety for their loved ones as absolutely disgusting. That has no place for a general forum or in the general public. A community should not need statistics in order to incorporate preventative measures. To do so would be counterproductive to safety in general. Many companies have preventative maintenance. This is preventative measures to take care of people and keep them safe. Why is it in the world that we always have to wait for something to happen or people to get hurt before we decide to act? Should I or one of my neighbor's kids become a statistic for our voice or our concern to be valid? So obviously, I don't think that scaring people into a decision is constructive. So I actually promote healthy and constructive debate. As far as environmental concerns, they argue that the distance it takes to travel around a block because of the traffic barricade on Barkley, that it hurts our environment due to its length and time is inconsequential. I calculated on 2 separate occasions, 2 different routes, and they added up to 0.6 and 0.7 tenths of a mile, taking an average of 2.5 minutes if you follow the traffic signs or laws, speed regulations. To go into that a little bit more in depth, this particular 0.6 to 0.6 of a mile, a typical sedan emits 4.4 grams of CO2 per mile. That's roughly 0.9 pounds per mile. So if you calculated that throughout a year, if the person traveled that each single day, it would be 324 pounds per year of CO2. Electric cars also have greenhouse gases as well, as they get their energy from many coal-burning plants. I included that in the piece as well. Now compare that to semi-truck traffic that we experience daily in Warrenville. One semi-truck emits 104.2 tons. That's 308,400 pounds of CO2 per million ton miles traveled. In general, a semi-truck can carry 1 ton, only 59 miles on 1 gallon of fuel. Relate that to rail, it can go 202 miles per gallon. And barge can take that same ton, 514 miles per gallon. So I would say to those who are concerned about the environmental impact of that little block that you're having to travel around, maybe a 2-block lap shouldn't be your biggest concern. You should be concerned about the bigger issue of all the development that has come in that has semi-truck traffic involved. The Amazon development, the FedEx development, the increased truck traffic developments, and the Speedway expansion up north on Batavia and Warrant 59. I would say that's a bigger issue to be concerned about than driving 2 blocks for a nuisance. Lastly, I want to talk to the motivation of the entire thing. While I understand that everyone has a voice, I kind of question that simply removing the signage because it's an inconvenience or a minor nuisance. Unfortunately, I think this is a little short-sighted course of action, and it's based on personal preference. Yes, you could say my preference. I have a preference as well, but mine's based on the safety of my children that I care for deeply, and who my 4-year-old is having a birthday right now. So if you want to call that a scare tactic, we can have a conversation later. So unfortunately, those that I petitioned or walked around and talked to, some of those folks said, well, I'm going to take it down because it's a nuisance, and I also got a traffic citation. To that, I'd say, well, you wouldn't have gotten a citation if you would have followed the rules. So I have a feeling that their vote was based on spite and preconceived notions. Lastly, the aim of any resident should be to listen to their neighbors and come to a reasonable, possibly forward-thinking conclusion. I could say this issue does not affect me because I don't live on Lakeview Drive, but that would be selfish and neglecting the larger community and the needs of their needs and their voice. While I might disagree with some, I still respect them, and I actually would rather strive to find a decent compromise. So I would ask again that you would give your vote, cast your vote to keep the signs up till at least we figure out what the development traffic is going to look like. And yeah, I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Happy birthday to your 4-year-old. I will make sure that this packet of materials that you've given us gets to the clerk. Okay, next speaker.
Good evening, everybody. Harlan Davis. I live at 30W020 Lakeview Drive. Moved in October of 1996. My wife joined me in September of 2000. I was there on Lakeview Drive when the signage did not exist and when traffic was doing its level best to get around the intersection at Route 59 and Route 56. There were mornings, and my wife will speak, Teresa Duvovich, to this point directly, where she couldn't back out of the driveway. Now, in those days, we were allowed to park on both sides of the street. So my neighbor across the street and I would routinely put our cars in such a way that only one vehicle could pass at a time. That helped slow down traffic, but it didn't mitigate it much. The point we discovered was that as I looked at traffic and vehicles, most traffic was trying to make a right turn onto what is Continental, to Lakeview, run down Lakeview to the west end, left turn on Barclay, right turn on Butterfield, and out again. It seems like a nice way around the light at Route 56, Route 59, and that was true to some extent before the intersection was renovated. After the intersection was renovated, we had the signage that exists now in place. The signage that exists now in place keeps the traffic down. Those who want the signage removed don't know what it was like to live on that street before the signage was there. The traffic was unrelenting. And by unrelenting, I mean it took my wife 3, 4, 5 minutes simply to back out of our driveway on the north side of Lakeview Drive. Now, the pictures don't show it. We live right about the center of Lakeview Drive, so I have a really good view both east and west. My solution back in the day when we got the signage in place was to put in speed humps to block off the street altogether because the traffic was so much. And again, I remind you, we had parking on both sides of the street. The street is not arterial design. 3 cars can barely pass without taking their outside mirrors off. My mailbox has taken out quite a few people's outside mirrors. Costs me a lot less to replace my mailbox than it does to replace their mirrors, so I have a little bit of feeling of justice here. The amount of traffic in those days before the signage was significant, and it was just as busy as you would think it would be based on the traffic now on Route 59 and on Butterfield. Most of the traffic is aiming to get around that intersection per their app on their new fancy phone, which didn't exist 15 years ago. Those of us who live on this street know it's a residential street. It's crowned. It has no markings. We park on one side, the south side these days, and 2 cars passing, if they don't slow down, they probably will clip their mirrors. It's that tight. If we start adding the kind of traffic I remember from the early 2000s, we'll be once again back in the day when this is not a residential street, but an arterial street, and it simply is not going to work. It's just too much volume. The state of Illinois has done their best to upgrade, but expansion of population and development can't quite keep pace with the infrastructure, and that's pretty typical, unfortunately. As someone who lives right where I can see the most distance down Lakeview Drive, I watch speeders every day cruising at 30, 40, 50 miles an hour. It's not real hard to figure out how fast someone's going when you mark a mailbox by its shadow, mark another mailbox by its shadow, know the distance between them, and then stopwatch when the shadow goes by. The fastest I've ever clocked was 52 miles an hour. It's crazy. I don't want to see those days return. So the signage in its current position limits the traffic. We still get cut through traffic to Two Brothers, both directions, to their current location. We can deal with that. But as Tom Smiley said, the neighborhood is turning over. And old folks like me and my wife who don't have children are gradually moving out. We're not going to leave anytime soon, but a lot of younger people are moving in. So I request that this signage not be changed. I'm a direct beneficiary of the signage where it is now. I am happy to go the other way as necessary. Yes, I still work, although not as often as I once did, which means I still commute down to I-88 to get on my way. I still use Route 59. So when the clock is right, I'll exit via Barclay. When the clock isn't right, I'll go the other way. But I don't see the traffic coming through our neighborhood like I did 15 years ago. I request you keep the signage in place.
Thank you. Was Teresa Dubovich next, or, yeah?
Hello, my name is Teresa Dubovich. I'm at 30W020 Lakeview Drive. And I'm just going to reiterate some of the things my husband said. I moved in before the signage went up, and the traffic was unbelievable. It was very difficult to back out of the driveway, and there was a lot of speeding that went on, and people were cutting from Route 59 to get over to Butterfield. And so I think it's really important that we keep the signage going. I've noticed a lot of young people moving into our neighborhood, which is just absolutely great. And there's a lot of people that have pets. We have a pet. And we like to be out walking on the street. And in the last couple of years, I've seen more children out, more dogs, more cats, everybody. And so I'd like to really keep it that way. But if we have people speeding through Lakeview Drive, it's going to be really difficult to be out. I do remember when our neighbors across the street had their children were a lot smaller, and we were always looking out for them when their dog ran across the street. There was lots of slamming onto the brakes, and they had very young children then. So it was really something that was very concerning. So I was really happy to see the signage go up.
Thank you. Go ahead, yeah.
Hi, my name is Marty Kometz. I live at 30W002 Lakeview Drive. And I've lived there for over 25 years, and I remember what the traffic pattern used to be, and it used to be extremely heavy, especially during the rush hour, whether it was the morning or the evening. Rush hour traffic seems to have expanded at this time, so it's taking a little bit longer amount of time. But I would like the signage to remain as it is, because I won't reiterate everything that's already been said due to time, but traffic was bad. It was heavy, and we had more people that would then speed down the street. And we did have concerns for our kids and our pets also. And that's just something that we want to avoid, because it isn't really a through street, as was mentioned, just because of the way that the subdivision was designed. Thank you very much. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak now or wait till we talk to the item? Okay, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. My name's Ron Butler. I live at 30W080 Lakeview Drive, and I'm one of the original residents of that area. So I've been there a long time. I'm not going to talk too long since I'd be repeating what I've heard up here, but exactly the same thing. For years, when we first moved in, the traffic got substantially worse down Lakeview, and eventually the city did a study to try to alleviate the problem. They came up with this current solution, which works. So traffic was really reduced considerably by that solution. And Actually, I'm puzzled why we're even here, to be honest with you, because what we're doing is we have a complaint that is essentially that some people are disturbed because it's not convenient, and they're opposed, and they're making that versus neighborhood safety. So that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. If we remove the barricades, the traffic's going to increase again, and we're going to be right back to where we were before, and there's going to have to be another solution. And there's no question that if the traffic increases, we're going to have a safety issue there. So I would ask you to leave the controls in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis.
My name is Stephen Lewis. I live at 3S 127 Lakeview Drive. For the users that don't know where that is, I'm basically at the start of the curve when you're coming south on Lakeview Drive. I was here, I moved in 1988, when the barricade was in the Lakeview Drive. It was removed. Traffic did increase. I was here when the decision was made to make the blockage because they were trying to do two things. One was to reduce traffic. The second was to reduce speeding. It has reduced the traffic. It has not reduced the speeding. If you don't believe that, drive by my front yard and see the tracks that are in it. Somebody didn't make the curve. Lakeview Drive from Continental to that curve has several curves. You cannot see from the start of that to the end of it, and it's only 600 feet. That means you have about 200 feet of visibility. That means you're covering that in 4 seconds at 25 miles an hour. People can't stop. I do not recommend removing the signage. It is doing its best. I also think we will have to reevaluate this when Two Brothers come in. We also need to do a lot of review of the intersection at Continental and 59. We have had 2 pedestrian deaths in the last 2 years in that area. We've had numerous accidents. The one time that they shut down the 59 from Continental to Butterfield, and people routed their way through Lakeview Drive, they backed all the way up to my house, which is a mile from that intersection. This is going to be a tough decision for a long time. It's going to have to be reviewed. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Okay, there's still a couple more. Want to speak now or when we get to the item? Yeah, please.
Hey, good evening. I'm Brian Sweeney. I live at 3 South 070 Sunset Drive, and I've lived on that house since 1985. So I've seen everything that's gone through all the different iterations. I'm in favor of getting rid of the barricade. The purpose it was put in, as has been discussed, was the traffic, and that was all due to Butterfield Road before it was under construction. Now that it's been rebuilt, I mean, the council at the time talked about revisiting this, after the construction was done. It is done. Traffic moves well through there. Going south on Route 59, there's 5 lanes to go through that Butterfield intersection. 1 dedicated right-hand turn, 2 lefts. And I just think it's a mistake at this point to just assume that traffic is going to resume to the same point it was back whenever, 10 years ago, whenever it was. Because people don't need the shortcut anymore. And there's a fear, I think, of just having the traffic returning. I mean, part of that fear back when we put in these measures was a no turn to avoid people from bypassing the barricade by turning down Sunset Drive. There was a no turn restriction put on Sunset. So it's still there, but it's never been a problem. We put a restriction in for something that didn't exist at that time. I mean, I think there's other things that can be addressed. I know people are talking about the speed. That's a separate issue, and I know the speed limit's been reduced on Lakeview. There could be three-way stop signs. I've got no objections to the stop signs, but I just don't see the need for the barricades there anymore. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, please step forward.
Hi, my name's Simeon White. I live at 30W010 Lakeview Drive. Lived there for about 2 years, so I thought I'd take this time to come. I've been around Warrenville, around the area, since I was born. I remember Harlan is saying about 1996 when the traffic was terrible on Lakeview. I remember in 1994, 1993 when my mother and me would get out of church and she'd want to go on a country drive, so we'd drive down 59 to Naperville to see the country. How things have changed, right? Go to Naperville now, and you'll be driving for at least 20 minutes till you get into the country, even more. And what's going to happen? It's going to keep changing, right? What's going to happen to Butterfield? They're going to add more lanes. Walmart, Amazon, Fellows. We got all these companies. We got a 250-unit apartment complex coming in. That's great. I'm all for it. But Lakeview Drive is a drive. It's not a thoroughfare. It's not a thoroughfare. It really isn't. So when I first got the letter in the mail from the police, what is this? Start reading it. And something crossed my naive mind. From going jogging on the other side of Butterfield, over there behind Amazon, those houses. I was running around back there one day with my dog. I noticed that they had a barricade with a chain on it and a lock, locking it. And I saw that and I thought, oh, they're blocking that because of Amazon. They don't want all that Amazon traffic cutting through that nice little country neighborhood there. Great. So I got this letter and I thought, oh yeah, they're probably going to lock down the end of the road. Oh yeah, of course, they're not going to do that. But then I started to wonder, what's the motivation here? And I thought about it, and I thought the motivation is not anybody who lives on Lakeview Drive. It's people that want to get to Walmart, to wherever they're going, over that way. They want to get over there faster. I understand that. Me too. I go to Walmart, and I get to the end, and I turn right on Barclay, and I go, and I got to drive around the bar and drive by the abandoned lot and go out and then shoot on to Butterfield. And it takes about 30 seconds, maybe 1 minute extra. Other people want to get through because they're going to want to go through because they're out of work. They don't want to hit 59 and 56. I understand that too. But these are all people that don't live there. They don't live on Lakeview. So, and somebody mentioned that maybe about a year ago, maybe 6 months ago, there was an accident on 59, and they routed the traffic through there. My wife and I went outside, and what is going on? We're looking, oh my gosh, this is insane. And then talking to some of my neighbors, said, yeah, that's how it was. That's how it used to be. So yes, you can open it up, and that's going to be great, and everybody will be able to cut through, but you're changing the nature of the road. It is now a different road. It's not just a neighborhood road. It is a permanent artery of people going through there, and you can't change it back. And scare tactics aside, what if something does happen? What if it's not as nice? It's not the same. It's not that important. 59 and 56 to go around and take a couple extra minutes. Walmart is open 24 hours a day. They'll wait. It'll be fine. You don't have to cut through our neighborhood. It's just, and the concerns of, will it be that bad? I'm pretty sure it'll be that bad. I've lived around here a long time. You know what? When I'm in a rush to get somewhere and there's a gas station right on the corner, am I guilty? Yes, I cut through the gas station and skip the light. And once people realize that they can cut through here all the time and they work over there, or they work in that direction, it's going to be the daily route. And it's only going to be people who don't live on Lakeview that are using it. Because if you do live on Lakeview, you just go to the end and go around the bar. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I've got one left here, Justin Kahn, but okay, yes.
Hello, my name is Justin Kahn. I live at 3S191 Brookside Court. My court is on the south side, up in Lakeview. My daughter is 6.5 years old, and she is just learning to bike without her training wheels, so she's trying to zip around as fast as she can. I have been clocking cars going 35 to 40 miles per hour going to Two Brothers. She always pulls ahead of me, so if the cars are whipping through there and they start going even faster, it's potentially going to be an accident. I'm not the only one also with someone who has a child 10 years or younger. As Tom was saying, people are moving in. I also have a dog that I take for walks in the evening. I am not going to be wanting to have to deal with, again, cars whipping past. First of all, it's going to make him upset. Second of all, what if there's an accident? I'm concerned about this because we moved to Warrenville. I've been here for about 10 years now as of June, and we enjoyed the small feel of the town. We preferred it over Wheaton and Naperville. But unfortunately, I mean, I'll be the first to admit, I'm not a fan of the Two Brothers expansion because they're going to tear down the trees along my backyard, and there's going to be a 5-story hotel looking down into my backyard. I wasn't aware that there was going to be a hotel there. That doesn't thrill me. But then talking about increasing the traffic, and pretty much I'm now surrounded by a business on my back end and faster traffic on the front. So why would I want to stay in Warrenville if we can't keep the family and we can't keep the small town feel? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, if anybody else didn't know they needed to sign up and wanted to speak during the citizens' comments period, we'll still have citizens' comments on the items of the agenda as they come up if anybody wants to say any more on this. But if not, we'll move on to the next item, which is the officials and staff comments, and we'll start with the mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, everyone who came out tonight to voice their opinions. I always am proud of my community when people come and say something in a respectful way to each other and to us, and you certainly did that tonight. It's appreciated, and we appreciate the input. You have another opportunity for input a week from Tuesday, which is Election Day. So I hope you research the candidates that are running for office so you can make an informed decision, and I hope that you vote. It's an off-year election. Turnout is going to be small. You will be electing people at the city level who will represent you for 4 years coming up, so it's in your best interest to take a look at the candidates and make an informed decision. So join me in voting next Tuesday, and again, thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you. Any other officials or staff that have comments? Alderman Ashour.
I'd just like to thank everybody for coming. I've pretty much lived through this with most of you people that have been here a long time. The petition was brought forth by some people who felt inconvenienced by the current traffic pattern. We've had enough changeover that sometimes we need a little refresher course for the new people that have moved in to understand why we've done what we did. We closed off the road. Nobody liked that. The solution that we have now is has shown to be the best choice. I can tell you personally, when I come down 59 on heading south from Batavia Road at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it's a parking lot all the way south of Butterfield. And to think that everybody on that road doesn't want to, the ones in particular that are turning west on 56 aren't going to want to get there sooner is just a little naive. I think that the problem would be compounded compared to what it was. Certainly we can do better with the traffic enforcement as far as speeding on that road. But I don't think that reopening it to the type of impact we had in the past, where people that live here can't even get out of their driveway or feel like they can be safe with their children on a road that is essentially a residential street, should change. So I've supported from the beginning that it should stay in place. And thank you all for taking the time to come.
All right, any other comments? I have one. Tomorrow, March 26th, the school district is going to be conducting a major safety exercise at both high schools, Wheaton North and Wheaton Warrenville South High Schools. It's going to be a big homeland security drill. There's going to be a lot of road closures. There'll be a lot of emergency vehicles. This will be between 8 a.m. and noon, so there's no need to be alarmed if you see any of that, and please try and avoid driving through that area. It is a safety exercise and not a real emergency, just so everyone knows about that. Okay. I think that's all for officials and staff comments, so we're moving ahead with the business of the meeting. We'll start with, since everyone's here for, we're going to start with the one that we've got the audience for, the discussion of survey results regarding the petition seeking to remove traffic regulatory signage at Lakeview Drive and Barkway. And we are going to go to Chief Toronto to present this information.
Thank you, Chairman. As we're all well aware, at the January 28, 2019 Public Safety Committee of the Whole meeting, a petition was circulated which requested the removal of regulatory signage and the barricade placed at Lakeview Drive in Barkley, approximately 200 feet south of Lakeview Drive. After discussion, a directive was given to staff by the committee to survey residents with Lakeview Drive addresses, as well as those residents that have homes located on cul-de-sacs that run off of Lakeview Drive. A bit of background information that I did when I was researching this before I was here. The issue of regulating the cut-through traffic, and that was the main theme that I read in going through all the research. It was the cut-through traffic, the volume of the traffic, which was cut-through traffic, and the speed that prompted these studies and these complaints. But part of the initiatives that have been put into place, and these began in the 90s and then really took hold in the early 2000s, was conducting traffic counts and speed studies. At one point, they were placing an unmanned police vehicle to act as a deterrent in the area to cut down on traffic. They placed no left turn signs on westbound Lakeview Drive at Barkley Avenue, placing a barricade on Barkley about 200 feet south of the Lakeview Drive. Really, it's just a little bit north of Y'all, where that Class A barricade is. There's also markings on the pavement along with diagonal striping. I've taken some photographs, and this is the one if you are going, if we go back one, please. This one would be if you're going westbound on Lakeview, right at Barkley. You see the, no, it flips, Christine. Back there, thank you. Keep that sign up there like that. There's a stop sign, and on the bottom it says no left turn, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. Okay, that's currently in place. And if you take the next shot, okay, this would be if you're looking, going in a southerly direction on Barkley. If you see the intersection to your left there, it's a T intersection. There is no regulatory signage here, but as you move further down, you can see where that barricade is. And then the last shot, please. Next one. There we go. This would be if you're looking at going northbound on Barkley, and you can see a do not enter, along with a Class A barricade. You can see the pavement markings. And this, again, Y'all is the cross street right here. If you disregarded the signage and you went, you'd have to go about 200 feet before you hit Lakeview. And this was finally decided on the October 15, 2007 council meeting, as they approved leaving this barricade and signage up as they had completed a year-long police monitoring and enforcement initiative, and they found it to be successful. So with regard to the survey, we distributed a total of 61 surveys, which were mailed during the third week of February 2019, with a requested response date of March 16, 2019. We got a total of 40 responses back, which is 65.6% response rate. And we had 4 questions that we posed to the respondents. One being, do you support leaving the current signage and barricade in the Lakeview Drive and Barkley Avenue intersection? Yes, we got 52.5 or 21 responses, favored leaving the current signage in place. 19 responses or 47.5 did not want the current signage to remain. Number 2 was, do you support removing all traffic control signage and the barricade in the Lakeview Drive and Barclay intersection. 19 responses said yes, 47.5%, and no, 21 responses, or 52.5, did not want the current signage and barricade removed. Number 3 was, do you support removing the barricade on Barclay, approximately 200 feet south of Lakeview Drive, but keeping the current intersection signage in place? 9 responses, or 22.5%, favored removing the barricade, but leaving the no left turn signs in place. And 30 responses, or 75%, did not want the barricade removed and wanted the no left turn signage to remain in place. And finally, we said, do you support some other type of traffic control to limit the volume of cut-through traffic on Lakeview Drive? Please provide a written response. We had a total of 20 written responses, and they're included there for you to review. Some of them just said that we could put up signs that say no through traffic and local residents only, and Summer Lake's residents only sign, and remove the barricade and things like that, which that may be nice, but you can't do that on a public street, is to limit the access of who can use it. So it would be my recommendation, and I base this from experience, and in hearing some of the residents here, I agree with them totally, that you've heard the saying that if you build it, they will come. Well, if you remove it, they will come. And if you take the signage down, everything in my experience tells me that people will continue or begin using this again as a cut-through. And again, the main crux of this was to limit the amount of cut-through traffic on this street. Speeding was not brought up as a main issue, although we do monitor speeding there, and we will continue to do so, and it may pick up in the summer, and you're never going to get 100% compliance, but you know, we've got those speed carts out, and we also have our traffic officers out there, and it's something that again, we can be have a little bit more visible presence. But it would be my recommendation to leave these in place, because I do think it's I think it has provided a solution to the problem that was originally presented when this was studied, and the amount of the complaints that we get from in that area are virtually nil. So.
Thank you, Chief. Just to respond to some of the questions that were raised earlier, one of the residents said that no one on Sunset got a survey. Were they sent surveys?
Sunset was not. We did it on all of the cul-de-sacs on Lakeview Drive. If we started with Sunset, I didn't know how far we wanted to go down. And my basic concern was getting Sunset Drive and all the cul-de-sacs that ran off of that. And that's what we did. Lakeview, excuse me.
Okay. Council members, comments, questions? Yes, City Treasurer Brunner.
Do you want to address why this time the signage at Sunset and Lakeview? Is that a concern? Because that, to me, is corresponding to this other signage. There's a no cut through. It would be, I guess it'd be a right turn, going through to Sunset, going down Sunset from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. That corresponds to this.
There was nothing that was included when we were directed to do this to take a look at that. This was strictly Lakeview and Barclay, and that's what we did.
Which actually affects it, because that would let somebody cut through by going around through Sunset and circling around down to Barclay. It's part of the same detour. I just thought I'd bring it up before you vote on it to maybe when the final vote next week to include it or not include it, but just at least you know about it.
Okay. Any other citizens who want to make a comment at this time? Or questions? Okay. Alderman Davalos?
Thank you. So if you're coming south on Barclay, before you get to Lakeview, you can continue south on the other side of the barricade and then come on through. It's the traffic on Lakeview that's going left, right?
No, you can't. If you're going south, no, you'd either have to detour down y'all, because you'd be driving on the wrong side of the roadway.
No, south. I'm talking about south.
Excuse me, you're right. South, yes. South you can continue to go down. Excuse me.
Okay.
North you can't.
Okay, okay.
Right. There's no traffic sign. There's no stop sign up there. There's no signage. And if we go back, you can see it in the slide.
Okay.
If you want to make a comment, please come to the mic. There are people watching at home, so we want to just be able to hear what you're saying. So please come forward. and then the clerk can include it in the minutes and everything.
Okay, one other thing about that too is, as they're saying, going south on Barkley, it's not impeded, there's no sign. And in addition, where Calumet intersects there, there's also no stop sign. So that's not a three-way stop either. So that's someone who can be coming down southbound on Sunset and just whip through both those roads. So they're going straight through, so there's no signage to stop them from slowing down.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Alderman Ashour?
The sign on Sunset, I think, is an important part of the way the traffic works. Alderman Bevere called me today to let everybody that's here know that he supports leaving the signage. He was deeply involved in that and as our former street superintendent, and actually helped to develop the process we have now that seems to be working pretty well. But once again, I support it. Actually, I'd like to make a motion to recommend the City Council leave the current signage and barricades in place at the intersection of Lakeview Drive and Barkley Avenue.
We have a motion by Alderman Ashour, a second by Alderman Wilson. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And I hope that the people who originally brought forward the petition and who brought this up do feel that their concerns were heard and considered very carefully, and that staff took this very seriously to follow up on that petition. And I know it's difficult when a lot of people show up to one meeting and say one thing, and a lot of people show up to another meeting and say the exact opposite. But I think when we have our professional staff with such a very decided recommendation, then it becomes pretty clear what we should do. So thank you so much for everybody speaking out on this issue. All right, moving on to item number 2 on the agenda. Consideration of an agreement with GovHR for a temporary planner position in community development. Community and Economic Development Director Menser.
Thank you and good evening. You may recall just over a month ago when I provided my budget presentation for fiscal year 2020, we talked in some detail about all the new private development projects that are on the books and likely will be moving forward this coming construction season. At the same time, there are a wide variety of important city initiatives that the Community Development Department is either leading or an integral part of advancing this coming fiscal year. The worry is from a staffing standpoint that with a relatively small staff and a large volume of private development overlaid with a lot of complex city projects, that we just won't be able to.
Just one moment. I'd like to thank everybody who's having conversations. If you could take it out to the hallway, that'd be great. You're welcome to stay for the meeting, or you're welcome to continue your conversations after, but right now we do have a meeting to continue. So if anybody wants to chat out in the hall with the door shut so we can hear ourselves, we'd appreciate that. Thank you. Go ahead.
So the concern is we just won't have enough staff, horsepower, staff, human resources to accomplish both proper regulation of the new private development and be able to advance all the important city initiatives. So what we've done is we've developed a decision package that's included in this year's, or in the fiscal year 2020 proposed budget that would allocate $26,000. That $26,000 was envisioned to allow us to hire a temporary employee, a temporary planner that would help do some of the day-to-day interaction with our customers, review building permits for zoning compliance, assist in processing subdivision and zoning requests through the Plan Commission. We have been working for the last several weeks with GovHR, which is a temporary staffing firm that specializes in providing staffing assistance to governments, to find out what type of employees might be available and the cost of those employees. We have been fortunate to recently be presented with the opportunity of potentially hiring a temporary municipal planner that has experience in working in the DuPage County area. highly recommended from some of the former employers that have worked with this individual. So what we've done is we've negotiated a draft contract that's included in your agenda backup materials, and what we're looking for tonight is a recommendation from the committee that would ultimately end up on the city council agenda, is to allow us to go forward, execute that contract, and get somebody in-house sooner than later. Ultimately, the $26,000 would support about 16 to 18 hours a week during the construction season, which is basically on the cusp of blowing up. April is typically one of the busier construction months for us, and it would take us through the end of this construction year and give us something to start with next year too. So that's what the request and proposal is. It's consistent with what has been presented as part of the decision package in the budget and was discussed. I highlighted at the recent Saturday budget meeting.
Thank you. And one other point just on the timing of all this. I know we haven't passed that budget decision package yet or the budget yet, but we know that the construction season is fast approaching, and we really want to get the hiring part going before that step.
Yeah, the goal would be to get somebody in-house probably in mid-April, based on, you know, how this all transpire, second, third week in April, so we could start getting that person trained and understand the city's processes and the city's regulations. There will be some training that has to occur regardless of whoever we hire.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Alderman Widener.
Yeah, I agree with this action and make a motion to recommend the city council approve a contract with GovTemps USA for temporary contract planner assistance in an amount not to exceed $26,000 and subject to the city attorney's review.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Widener, second by Alderman Davalos. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ron. Moving right along. Item number 3, the consideration of the Bicyclist and Pedestrian Advisory Commission request to close certain streets in conjunction with local Warrenville bike rodeo activities. Management Analyst Miller.
Good evening, Council. Thank you. Before you tonight is a request from the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission for the closure of certain portion of Stafford Place for the 14th annual Warrenville Bicycle Rodeo, which is going to be held on Saturday, May 18th from 9 a.m. to noon. Again, it's a great opportunity for kids to have their bikes checked and tuned, complete a bicycle safety course, have a helmet fitting, and also win prizes, such as a new bicycle or bicycle-related equipment. BPAC is recommending the City Council authorize the closure of a portion of Stafford Place from the gazebo to the eastern half of the Veterans Memorial Circle. And again, with the attachment tonight, with the memo is a map identifying the recommended road closure and general layout of the event. And with that, I'll take any questions. Thank you.
The bike rodeo is always such a fun event. Any comments or questions? Or a motion? Alderman Widener.
I just wanted to make clear that this is just a temporary closure for the period of the special event, and I make a motion to recommend the city council authorize the partial closure of Stafford Place for the annual bike rodeo event as stated in the March 20th, 2019 memo from management analyst and the BPAC staff liaison Miller.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Widener, second by Alderman Wilson. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Yes, Pat, I heard you vote too. Okay. Moving on to item number 4, consideration of Bicyclist and Pedestrian Advisory Commission request for the City Council authorization to solicit and accept donations for the local bike rodeo. Again, Management Analyst Miller.
Thank you again, Council. Again, another request for the bike rodeo, 2019 bike rodeo solicitation request. The BPAC, as well with staff and City Treasurer Brenner, is nice enough to solicit and ask for items that are generously donated or offered at discounted prices by businesses around Warrenville for the bicycle rodeo. BPAC is again requesting the City Council to authorize to solicit local businesses for donations of items to use as prizes or monetary donations to purchase prizes for drawings at the 2019 Bike Rodeo. The solicitations will be done in person or via phone by, again, BPAC Chair Segru, Jerry Segru, City Treasurer Larry Brenner, and myself. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions or comments? Alderman Widener.
Yeah, this has been a routine solicitation that's occurred for as long as the bike rodeo has been in effect, and it works out very well and provides a number of items for children who may not have working bikes or bikes at all, or helmets or other things. And then Mr. Brenner is always great about obtaining ice cream gift certificates from the local Dairy Queen, and we appreciate his efforts there. And with that, I make a motion to recommend the City Council approve the request to solicit bids for the 13th Annual Bike Rodeo event on May 18th, 2019.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Yes, Alderman Wilson.
I have a question. It says request to solicit bids. I thought it was donations. Aren't we looking for donations?
Correct, it should be donations.
Yeah,
My
that
apologies.
seems to be a typo. Good catch.
Okay. With that correction, I vote yes.
Did the motioner and the seconder agree to that correction? Yes. All right, so the motion is with donations. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving to item number 5, a consideration of a request to dispose of surplus city property, utilizing propertyroom.com for unclaimed property. Chief Toronto.
Thank you, Chairman. This is pretty much a standard request that comes in front of the committee, that items that are recovered by the police department that were either reported stolen in a crime, and once recovered by the police department, the owner was paid by an insurance claim, and therefore the insurance company no longer wants the property. We utilize the service from propertyroom.com. Essentially, they do all the legwork in picking up the item, evaluating a fair market price for it, photographing it, running an auction, and any item that is sold for under $1,000, the city receives 50% of the sales price. Any items sold over $1,000, they would get 75%, the city would, of the sale price. We have Exhibit 1, which is an inventory of the property that is going to be auctioned by propertyroom.com. There's 4 items: a Sony DVD player, a Fitbit wrist device, a solar yard light, and a bike seat. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? Alderman Wilson.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend that the, excuse me, where am I? Recommend the City Council approve an ordinance authorizing the disposal of city-owned property through an auction conducted by propertyroom.com.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Wilson, second by Alderman Davalos. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving right along, item number 7, consideration of a change order to, or item 6, sorry, of change orders to extend the Dynamics 365 and Mazik City project timeline. Assistant City Administrator White.
Thank you. Good evening. You may recall in May of 2018, the city began implementing our enterprise resource planning software, or ERP, known as Dynamics 365, with the supplemental community development and public works component known as Mazik City. As the city staff has worked with Mazik and Baycor Group, our project manager, towards implementation, there have been some hiccups along the way with the timeline and the functional requirements, specifically for the HR and payroll component, that have required some additional customization and tweaking and workarounds to be worked out and solutions to be configured that were not part of the original system as built, that required some additional customization. That's delayed the timeline. The original timeline for Dynamics 365 was 14 months with a go-live date of June of 2019. We're now looking at a go-live of October 4th, I believe, of 2020. 2019 for D365. And similarly with Mazik City, the requirements gathering that we've worked through with Mazik and the Bay Corps teams has taken a little bit longer than we originally planned. We are also now looking at potentially including the utility billing component, which was specifically excluded initially from the scope of service because it wasn't part of the framework that Mazik City had that they could put together initially, but they believe now, given some of the customizations that we've done with the rest of Mazik City, that they can include a utility billing component. City staff's perspective on that is that it works in our benefit if we can do that all in one system versus having to go out later and do a bid for a utility billing component that's separate and that needs to be integrated with the new ERP. So it's worth exploring from our perspective, and the additional timeline associated with Mazik City covers the ability for us to look at incorporating the utility billing component. So with Mazik City, the original timeline was a 17-month implementation with a go-live date in October 2019. We're now looking at March 2020 for that one to go live. Obviously, there are some constraints and concerns with extending the timeline given the potential impact on other projects, but at this point, staff is recommending going forward with the 2 change orders to extend the timeline. There is no cost associated specifically with Mazik for the extension of the 2 timelines because we have a fixed cost contract with them, so there is no cost impact there. But because we have a separate contract with Bay Corps Group for project management, it will likely result in additional costs for that contract, which staff is reviewing and will bring forward at a future meeting in the next few weeks. With that, I'm here to answer any questions, and so is Finance Director Dahlstrand.
Right, and not just in another contract that you're going to be bringing forward, but also in the other contract that we have on the agenda tonight, the Bay Corps process change order. So we're considering 6 and 7 somewhat together as a joint decision, so saying that item 6 has no cost is a little bit disingenuous.
Well, no, I'm sorry, you're right. It's no cost associated with the Mazik contract. There is a cost with the Bay Corps project management contract. I apologize if that wasn't clear.
No, I don't think it was unclear, but I'm just mentioning the connection between the 2. Alderman Davalos.
Thank you. Because the Mazik portion has to do with the utility billing, we've talked about that on and off. It was presented in the goals for next year from the finance group. So I'm in favor of whatever gets us there. And so I sort of am glad to see that's on its way. I guess my overall question is, in light of these changes and in light of the whole project, both parts, I know all of staff is not here, but is your understanding from staff that we're going to be getting what they want in the end? You know, there have been changes. We've been doing this for a long time. I'm just wondering what the sense is that in the end, everybody's going to be fairly happy, maybe more than fairly.
Yes, at this time, the sense is that the project is going in the right direction. Some of the bumps along the road, I think, are standard when you have a project like this, because every group, every organization, every city village has a slightly different way of doing things. So we've worked through some of those things that the system maybe couldn't handle. I will say my experience, and I think I speak for Finance Director Dahlstrand as well, is that Mazik has met every requirement or issue that we've presented from a staff perspective, and has come up with some solution to get us to an end result that will work for us. So they have found a solution or a workaround for everything that we've brought forward. So I have every confidence that we will get to the end of this project and be able to do all of the things that we set out to do with our requirements.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. And I know the ERP is a huge amount of staff time. So when you say that the budgetary impact is none, but the other resources required is staff time, that is a very non-insignificant resource, because we have had a lot of staff time into this project already, and we are only going to have more as a result of this change order.
That is 100% accurate.
Okay. Any more discussion or questions? Or a motion? Alderman Berry.
I'd like to make a recommendation that the City Council approve change order WAR_CR_001 extending the Dynamics 365 project timeline to October 4, 2019, and change order WAR_CR_003, extending the Mason City project timeline to March 6, 2020.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Berry, second by Alderman Davalos. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we'll go back to Assistant City Administrator White for item 7, the consideration of a change order to add $3,960 to the Bay Corps process development contract for Mazik City.
Thank you again. As Alderman Goodman pointed out in September, the Bay Corps Group project is part of this bigger Dynamics 365 and Mazik City implementation. Fall of last year, the city entered into an agreement with Bay Corps to assist in developing community development and public works processes that would become part of the Mazik City framework. That proposal had 44 hours of meetings with the Mazik team to review those processes developed and configure changes and participate in the testing of those processes within Mazik City. We have gotten a little beyond what the initial estimate that Bay Corps had for that process review and recap and the functional design document review time, and therefore they're requesting an additional 24 hours to complete the remaining functional document review and participate in the testing component with Mazik City. That additional cost is $3,960.
Okay, and your experience with Bay Corps Group has been positive?
Absolutely. Bay Corps Group has been a phenomenal addition to this project. They have extensive background and experience with not only ERP systems, but also government and municipal services. So they have a very wide and deep understanding of what we do on a day-to-day basis and working through those processes and mapping out those processes. I'm not sure that we would have been as successful to this point had we not had Bay Corps Group involved.
Okay, great. Comments, questions? Alderman Davalos, did you have one? No. Okay. Alderman Wilson.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend the City Council approve the additional 24 hours of Bay Corps Group Process Development Consulting Services at a cost of $3,960.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Wilson, second by Alderman Davalos. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving on to item number 8, a consideration of a 1-year extension on the Acorn Van lease agreement. And there is more information about this that was left on the dais. Assistant City Administrator.
Thank you. Last year, you might recall that the city extended its van lease for a year, which would have taken us through April of 2019. At that time, we talked about the Ride DuPage program and running that pilot program alongside the Acorn Van program and being able to assess the two. With that Ride DuPage pilot program not starting until April of this year, we are recommending another 1-year extension of the lease agreement so that we can evaluate the two programs. In speaking to Public Works, the current van is operating well. We've had it in our possession since January of 2016. There is no reason at this point, mechanical or otherwise, to replace the van or eliminate it. So we are recommending an additional 1-year lease on the van with monthly lease payments. The copy of the contract with Santander for the lease agreement is included in the backup, as well as the transfer of ownership assignment agreement for Midwest Transit to take over possession of the vehicle at the end of the lease. This is very similar to the contract that we approved, or that you approved last year. All those changes that were incorporated in the contract last time around are incorporated into this one, and we do have attorney review in place before it comes back to council for any final changes that are needed.
Okay, Alderman Davalos.
Yes, can you just remind me how this is going to work? So riders of our Acorn Van program will have the choice, and it will be explained to them, of the two programs, and then they will decide which they want, and we'll get feedback that way.
Mm-hmm. So the van riders that are currently registered for the Acorn Van will have the opportunity to register for Ride DuPage, as well as any other riders in the community that meet the eligibility requirements. They will be registered for both programs. They can choose to ride either one, and then the city will be soliciting feedback from those riders to get an idea of their experience and the costs associated, as well as running reports from the Ride DuPage program that we'll be able to get through their system, as well as keeping track of rider information as we do now with the Acorn Van program.
Thank you.
Okay, so I had a question about, and maybe this is just a mistake in the summary memo, but with the option to purchase, if the owner is Midwest Transit, then why would it transfer ownership to Midwest Transit at the end of the lease if we have the option to purchase?
So our agreement with Santander for the lease allows us to either extend the lease, terminate the lease, or purchase the vehicle afterwards. Or there is the assignment agreement where the vehicle would switch ownership or be assigned to Midwest Transit if we decided not to purchase the vehicle or extend the lease. If we terminated our lease, it would be assigned then to Midwest Transit at that point.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Alderman Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
On the cost analysis sheet that you handed, a couple questions here. If on the actual for fiscal year 2018, you show ride card revenue of $5,100. It's quite a bit different from the preceding years and the projected for 2019. And also the number of rides. Can you explain the differences in there?
Absolutely. The ride card revenue is based on they're interrelated. So the number of rides will dictate the ride card revenue as well as the total expense of the operating the Acorn van. So as the number of rides decreases, the cost to ride, or the cost per ride increases. As far as acknowledging the difference, I can tell you, I believe there's a, this goes through February of the current fiscal year because we're not over the fiscal year yet. We won't have full data until April is over, and then we'll have data for the entire year. So I believe that will make some changes to that projected fiscal year 19 number. But I do believe overall, speaking to Public Works, the number of rides we've had this current fiscal year versus last year is down.
No, you know, because 2,444. That's quite a few number of rides there for actual in 2018. The preceding year was 19, and this is 24. I mean, that's a pretty good size increase, which is good. I mean, because obviously people use it. But that, okay, as long as I realize that there's a difference, it'll be rectified at the end of the fiscal year.
Right.
Those figures will adjust. Thank you.
And just as far as the fluctuation goes, I think sometimes the number of riders changes. Sometimes weather has to do with how many people ride. If we have a mild winter, we tend to have more rides. So last year, I think our winter was pretty mild as compared to this year. It was significantly colder and a little bit more treacherous, so that likely affected the number of rides that people went on during those winter months.
Yeah, well, having driven the van for a couple years myself, I know that it varies according to the weather, et cetera. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, I mean, it was very nice for a few years there when we saw our cost per ride dropping steadily. So this projected possible increase, although it may not end up being such a sizable increase in cost per ride, is what you're saying, but it was just a little disheartening to see that increase.
If you look at the table, the graph here that has the year-to-year analysis, the trend for fiscal year 14, 15, and 16, we were in the $22 to $23 range. Then we saw some decreases over fiscal year 17 and 18, which were nice. So I don't know that fiscal year 19 will end quite at that just over $20 mark. It may come down depending on the number of rides we have over these last couple of months. But it does fluctuate a little bit from year to year.
It does fluctuate a little bit, and I do have to say that, our past lead van driver did such a great job running this organization and keeping it very efficient. And now that our city treasurer isn't in that role anymore, things change, I guess. but he did such a great job. He's irreplaceable.
Let me just ask this question, if I may.
Certainly.
So you're saying that this number of rides, 1950, is extrapolated based on another unknown 2 months to go on projected FY19?
That is, at this point, yes, because we're projecting the number. It may change with the March and April data.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So we'll hope for some good weather. I mean, just sort of generally, I'd like the weather to be good. Alderman Widener.
And we hope the van continues to run in good order, too. With that, I make a motion to recommend the City Council approve a lease agreement with Santander for the current van through April 2019.
Second.
Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
2020, I'm pretty sure.
Could I change that to 2020? Thank you.
Okay, the motioner and the seconder agree, yes. All right, we have a motion by Alderman Widener, a second by Alderman Wilson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, item 9 on our agenda is a discussion of the fiscal year 2020 budget. This is the time that we have set aside for questions on that, and we'll go to Administrator Coakley.
Be happy to answer any questions. The Finance Director is here as well. Just to note, we still are available. If anyone wants to come in, the elected officials want to come in and sit down and have additional questions. We did have one meeting last Friday. It was a very productive meeting because not only did the official ask some good questions, but we also found some things in the budget we needed to fix, some typos, and there was a document we've been carrying forward for years, the community profile, just so everybody knows what we're talking about. And didn't realize there's some things that are out of date in that already, so we're updating those things. You'll see those when the budget goes out, not numbers in that case, just information. But we also looked at many pages of different data. We're able to answer some questions, and they're still looking into some. We will share whatever responses we give in writing to anyone. We'll share that with the whole council, so you're all aware of that, so there's no mystery about what we're talking about with one official and another. But certainly, if you have questions, nothing is too small of a question or too big of a question. We'll work on the answers and get it back to you. But I don't have anything else at this moment. And just a reminder, April 1st is the first reading of the budget ordinance and the budget public hearing. April 15th is the scheduled time for the adoption of the budget. The Finance Director will bring forward the memo, as he has for many years, at both of those meetings that gives any changes to the budget document since it was distributed at the end of February, early March. Just reminders about that.
Thank you, and I want to thank you and Director Dahlstrand for your time and answering my questions. Anyone else have questions or discussion that they want to go into about the budget right now? Okay, feel free to follow up with staff if you do. Item number 10 is a discussion of the fiscal 2020 citywide work plan. Administrator Coakley, once again.
Thank you. My original intent was to stop sharing that after the budget workshop, but it does tie right in with the budget, so I thought it's a good reference document. If there are questions that may overlap between the budget and there, so I will continue to have that included, at least committee of the whole meetings. There's one more before the budget would be adopted. But if there's questions, we've made the changes that were discussed and recommended a few months ago, but nothing has changed since then. But if there's questions or comments or anything about that, we certainly can discuss them now or bring back the answers.
Okay, seeing none, this is an informational only item. We'll go on to number 11, an informational update, status of the ERP implementation, and all in the backdrop, there's a memo about that. And of course, we've just had a rather lengthy discussion with the Assistant City Administrator about where we are on the ERP implementation. So if there are any questions, now is the time. Okay, seeing none, item 12 is an informational update on the fiscal year 2019 and 2020 Administration, Finance, and Police Department work plans and decision packages. There's information in the backup if people have questions about that. Now is the time. All right, seeing none, we'll move on to our commendations. Chief, we've got some very nice commendations in the backup.
Yeah, during the snap of cold weather at the end of January, we had a power outage up at Maple Hill. We went up there and did a couple check-on well-beings of our residents, and we got some very nice written response back from the residents thanking us, and also for a Girl Scout tour that we did at the police department.
Yeah, so we definitely want to thank Officer Massajak, Officer Perry, and whoever did the well-being check for Ms. Coleman. So thanks to all of our police officers for their great work. All right, I think that's all except for one item of business.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Wilson, second by Alderman Davalos. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you so much for your time.